I always knew something was kind of off with my health because I actually always had acne in my 20s. And I was like, something's going on. Something's going on with my digestive system. If this keeps happening, I don't know what or don't know why. So I kind of kept learning about my health and kept learning about my health. And then finally, I uncovered about learning about my cycle. And as soon as that happened, I was like, boom. This all makes so much sense.
How you've changed things up in terms of your approach to exercise, like intensity, what workouts you do, and how has that changed over time?
One thing that's awesome is always coming back, and now that I understand my body and know these shifts, know also where I'm at mentally as well as physically. Because the mental plays a huge part to it. And knowing that I might not be up for something 1 week of the month, and knowing that, then I'm able to have a totally different approach to my fitness.
After her own personal struggles with male-centric fitness programs, Lizzy Palmer went on a transformative journey to become a passionate advocate for female health within exercise. You'll hear our full interview, and we spoke about the difficulties that females can face with exercise, how popular training plans might not be appropriate, and how females can get more in touch with themselves and their menstrual cycles to unlock true enjoyment and consistency with exercise. So let's get going. Lizzy, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, James.
Yeah, pleasure. And I've been looking forward to this because it's going to be a fun one, because I think we've got a lot that we can talk about. And what I want to get into is female athlete health, or female health, and specifically in relation to exercise. But before we really get into that, I'd love to just know a bit more about who you are, what you do, and how you've actually got to this point.
Sounds great. Yes. So my background actually is, when I was young, I grew up playing all the sports, and I grew up as a dancer. And that actually was my first profession, as a dancer and doing theater. And so that's what brought me my connection always to my body. And now changed careers, then got into tech. I worked at Meta, worked at Roblox, worked at big tech, and then I got into startups. And then I was into startups. I was like, this is a whole other world. And what I'm currently doing now is I have created a company. It's called Sync In, and it's all about aligning fitness with the women's menstrual cycle. And so that's why I'm excited to chat with you all about this topic today, because it's something near and dear to my heart and what I'm very much sharing with a whole community. But all of this had happened actually, and why I got into this is because I took a rigorous fitness program, and that was actually created by male professional athletes. And I kind of did it because I was like, this could be fun and interesting. I just like doing things with other people. So I was like, okay, I'll do this. I didn't really actually have results that I was looking for particularly. I just did it for my own enjoyment and community's sake. And I then realized during it that it made me lose my cycle because it was so rigorous. And when you do programs like this, you kind of trust the people that are doing it. And you're like, okay, I'll trust you. But I do know that I know my body better than anybody else. And it actually had me stop listening to my body during this program. And so I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you for me. No, thank you for others. I want to do something about this and change and make sure ladies listen to their bodies and understand and listen to it.
How old were you when you lost your period at that point you're talking about?
It was just last fall. It was recently. So I was 33 when that happened. And I first learned about my cycle when I was about 26. So I had gone a long time, and I always was fit and active and didn't really think too much of it. And luckily didn't really have too much pain associated with my cycle. But I always knew something was kind of off with my health because I actually always had acne in my 20s. And I was like, something's going on. Something's going on with my digestive system. If this keeps happening, I don't know what or don't know why. So I kind of kept learning about my health and kept learning about my health. And then finally, I uncovered about learning about my cycle. And as soon as that happened, I was like, boom. This all makes so much sense. And I was able to make all these subtle but important shifts in my life. And then when I did that, everything was so much easier and simpler. When I made these shifts, again, I always was fit, but I actually stayed at a lower natural weight that was just appropriate for me and was able to do that consistently. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. It'll probably come back. It was like 5 pounds or something, like barely even anything, but I was still like, this is strange that like extra weight is gone. And I'm like, it'll probably come back at another phase. And I wasn't terribly concerned about it, but it never did. And then nothing's ever fluctuated. And I've had really great longevity throughout, and luckily haven't broken any bones, and all general health has been good. So it's been great.
And so just tell me a little bit more about that. So you're clearly then in touch with yourself, your cycle, and your training. And you mentioned you followed a more male-centric plan before, put you through a lot of stress, ended up losing your period, and then you made these changes. Can you tell me a bit about these changes, what you actually changed, what differences it made, and how you then translate that? Because you've also mentioned you've set up this community. So I'd like to just really go into that, but we'll start with you.
Of course. And so I feel like there's 2 different approaches. If you're really out of balance, then sometimes you need to really focus on it to bring yourself back to balance in a way. And so when I was more so like 26, I felt like I was pretty more so out of balance in a way. So I had to take extra care and pay more attention to it, and shifting some of the things that I ate. I definitely then, but also before it even gets into so much of the shifting, it is just taking care of your baseline health hormone habits. The things that we kind of just take for granted, like, okay, make sure you're getting enough water, make sure you're getting your sleep, make sure your blood sugar levels are at the right place, because that all does affect your hormone health. It's just, we kind of like brush those things off as like, yeah, we know that about our health. Tell me something interesting. Tell me something good that I should do. And it's like, no, those aren't things to forget, because that will absolutely impact how you're actually feeling. So it's actually just starting with those baseline habits, and then you can get into more of the nuances. And there's like, I know there's cycles, there's seed cycling, seed syncing, but if you're not ready for that, there's no point to changing what seeds you have on a salad if the foundation is all crazy. So it's really like understanding that foundation first, and then you can kind of elevate and get a little more nuanced, and then change to having some more root vegetables at certain times and some more fresh at other times, and get into a little more dance and fun with it in specifics when you're more ready for that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And from an exercise point of view, I'd love you to tell me how you've changed things up in terms of your approach to exercise, like intensity, what workouts you do, and how has that changed over time?
One thing that's awesome is always coming back, and now that I understand my body and know these shifts, know also where I'm at mentally as well as physically, because the mental plays a huge part to it. And knowing that I might not be up for something 1 week of the month, and knowing that, then I'm able to have a totally different approach to my fitness. And so then I don't ever have to feel so much shame about how I'm showing up or not showing up. And so a lot of it is understanding those hormonal shifts that go on. And then I'm able to account for those in my own life, and then also how I show up for it as well. So I do pay attention and listen to myself. And I feel like that's easier said than done, and how to best do that. Everyone has a different strategy, but generally it's breathe and be quiet, which can be done by journaling. It can be done by walking. It can be done by meditating. But what feels right for me at this time, what feels right for me energetically, what feels right for me emotionally, and navigating those. And so if I'm supporting my personal health, and me as a woman has these hormones, has these things that change, so then also how I show up for what I'm doing also can change too. And so I do the general rule of thumb where during follicular phase and your estrogen is rising and your hormones rising, I do get a surge of energy. And so I do go ahead and allow myself to physically embrace that as well. And then into ovulation and allow myself to explore, to try, to do something I haven't, to expand a little bit in a way of like doing the boxing or hit with a friend. I like incorporating the social definitely during that time.
Do you specifically plan your exercise around your cycle in the sense of like every time you know that you're coming up to the follicular phase, I'm struggling to say that, or you're in it, you think this is the time for me to do this certain exercise? Or do you just keep it in mind that you might feel more like that, so that's the time you're going to be more adventurous? I'm curious to see if you have like a cyclical pattern with your exercise which you kind of roll through, or whether it's more that you know how you might feel, so you're just a bit more open to changing things.
I think it's a bit of both. Me also as a person, I love changing things up. So staying with one thing all the time feels so boring. And I almost see like, you know, those classic things of a lunchroom and everyone sits in their one spot and they have the jocks and there's the nerds and then there's the computer people, then there's the band geeks and everyone's at their one table. I kind of feel like the fitness world starts to get that way too. We start to say like, I'm only one thing. I do boxing or I just do running and that's my thing. And I'm like, I sit at all the tables. I just choose when I want to sit at which table. And so I will sometimes mentally already plan out being like, you know what? This is going to be my Pilates stuff. I'm just going to put on these Pilates videos when I want to during this week. And then I'll leave it. And then I won't do it again for another 3 weeks. So I was able to make that shift, but then I leave some of it open to play too, and what I'm actually feeling that day. And because I do also enjoy doing sports and doing things with friends, and so you can't always account for your cycle with that. But when situations like that come up, then I'm like, well, I want to do it. I want to do my volleyball with my friends. But if I know that it's during my menstrual cycle, which generally is a great time for rest, reflection, that I'm like, well, I'm still going to do it. And I know my body can do it, that I know like a woman's body, and we both know like it can perform on every day. Like it can. It just doesn't have to. But what I'll do is on if volleyball's going on a day I'm menstruating, I'm like, I'm going to volleyball because I want to see my friends and I want to do this. But then maybe also just shift the rest of my day around it. And maybe I won't bike there and back. I'll like take the subway as I go. And then I'll make sure I have my meditation later that day. And while I'm eating dinner and I've made some vegetables, it's like, eat however much you want. You know, if you're still hungry, keep going. So I'll still do it, but sometimes just keep it all in mind. So then the day can still feel balanced.
Okay, nice. So I guess what you're saying is you don't have hard and fast rules of saying like during the time when you're menstruating, you don't do this or this, but actually you have the awareness that you might feel different, and it's kind of keeping that in mind, and therefore that helps you to either recover better, you know, feel better, and just give yourself maybe a bit of leeway, rather than saying like, oh, I must do this, and because I always do it, it's always in my plan or whatever. It's actually saying, well, you know what, I might not be feeling quite as good as normal. I might need to give myself some extra recovery time. I might need to drink more water. And therefore, that's kind of where the being more in touch with your body comes into it. Because if you don't have that to start with, then you might not ever understand that you do need more rest, or you do need to hydrate a little bit better. And then you're kind of almost expecting yourself to be level over the whole month. And that's kind of the issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. And on the day of menstruating and went to volleyball, then the next day, I will have no shame for not working out then. It's like, you're fine. There's no expectation that every day I had to be the same and I had to show up because I sit at the runner table and the runner table has to do their 4 runs a week and I have to get this distance in. It's like, there's no distance goal. It's just what I'm feeling and what table I'm feeling like sitting at that day. So it's really able to take, a lot of that pressure off if I'm understanding where I'm at. And then knowing that, if I'm not vibing with it this day, give myself a few days and let's see how you feel then. And be like, okay, you'll that it will change, that whatever I'm feeling won't stay consistent.
Awesome. And is this a sort of approach and the reason you wanted to build Sink In then? So, because you've talked about kind of empowering women to become more in tune with their bodies, get involved in exercise and use a female approach to it. Is that the whole vibe behind it?
Yes. And it's called Sink In because it's sinking in tune with yourself, sinking in tune with your body and listening to it and understanding these nuances and these shifts. Because at the end of the day, fitness is supposed to be a part of your health journey. That's like the goal. But if we do it in the improper way, it just becomes stress, and then too much stress and actually can start to deplete you. And well, that's just a bummer. That's not what we're after at all. So if we can understand our bodies and then we can start to act in tune with it, and then we can actually start to celebrate our bodies too. And I do feel like as women, there's a lot of shame wrapped around how we move or don't move or how we look. And we feel like we're supposed to hit certain expectations. So being able to release that is a big shift going through. And part of the also empowering women is looking at, if you can't vouch for yourself in small ways, when can you vouch for yourself in big ways? So in a fitness class, we see the instructor as worthy. We will do what they say. We are there to get their guidance. And so if they say high plank, then like the class is going to go into a high plank. But let's say someone's wrist is hurting them. How many times will she do a forearm plank? When it's like, who really cares, end of the day, if it's high plank or forearm plank? That's not the point. But I want her to feel confident to make that adjustment for herself and to be like, I'm okay doing this. This is good for me. This is me showing up for myself for where I am now. And so I want her to make sure she feels confident in that small way, which that seems so small. That sounds so trivial. Like,
yeah, but it bleeds into everything, right? In the sense of that is, it's how you approach your day-to-day life. It's how the confidence to go into other aspects. And if you, I guess, if you can't do something which is so personal and so personal to that individual, how can you translate that into anything bigger?
Yeah. No, but I don't want her going around. It's like just metaphor, obviously, of the wrist. It can be so much more, but to be in pain later, to say, I'll just suck this up and I'll be okay and I'll deal with it later. It's like, no, if you know now to adjust something and something is hurting you, but honestly, you're different than the person next to you. You have a past that is different than who is next to you. And that instructor doesn't know that. And how would they know that? So you need to know your strength of your body and you need to connect with it. And then you need to vouch for it at times when someone else doesn't know that.
Yeah, makes total sense. So I think there's a really interesting thing to talk about as well. And we spoke about this off air a little bit about what evidence there is around the menstrual cycle and training, how females should or shouldn't manage their training. And I suppose as a bit of background, so I'm a sports nutritionist and I've always had quite an interest in female athlete health. And that's specifically around the menstrual cycle, knowledge and how it affects things. And so as part of my master's degree, I did some research into the menstrual cycle and contraceptive use, and I found it fascinating. And I think it's really clear that there's not enough knowledge about exercise and female health, how contraceptives impact it, the individual's knowledge, and that, I guess that links back to empowerment as well. And also there's a huge gap in the research where females aren't taking part in studies, in sports nutrition, sports science studies, because typically it's the kind of rationale is because they have their menstrual cycles and that might change the results. So they're usually excluded and it's really bad. We're getting better. But I used to be very heavy on saying that females should change their exercise based on the menstrual cycle. So at different points, they might feel stronger. They might be better from an aerobic kind of cardiovascular point of view. Other times they might be stronger. The current research we have is that there's not enough good evidence to support this, in that there has been some, and there doesn't really seem to show much of a difference in terms of performance and all the metrics associated with that. But like I said, there's a big gap. And I think there is this huge personal element to this. So I would just love to know your thoughts on this a little bit, kind of how you would approach it in terms of your own routines, and how you would apply that to others.
Yeah, I agree that there's such a lack of research done on women's bodies, and that it wasn't until 1993 that women were included in studies. So unfortunately, due to this gap, there's a lot more to uncover and to learn. And I'm excited for that, for the growth of women's health, of what's to come, because it's kind of ridiculous that these things have been unanswered for so long. But at this moment in time, that is the situation. And so I think it's also going off of what we do know is different from females and males. And we do know that the science has been done on males, and we do know that their hormones are very different from women, and that we do know the 28-day cycle and the hormones fluctuate, and that does provide differences and shifts within the woman. And the other thing that we do know is, well, this is actually, I feel like there's a very big difference between performance and training.
Right.
That women can perform on any day. They are strong enough to achieve whatever they want to do and whatever they need to do on that day. Just because they can do it on every day of the month, whenever they feel like it, does that mean that they have to every time? And that creates really intense expectations to follow every single day. And when we also know how important rest is, it's undeniable how rest is very key to performance and for athletes, and getting that rest in. And within the women's body, there is a natural time that's already accounted and slotted for rest in a way. So might as well use that time. But it also just, rest is important to make sure that also gets in.
And would you generally advise women to specifically take more rest at that period, or would it just be that you're trying to highlight that they might need it?
I think it really depends on them and their exact body. And so listening to them, but it's kind of giving them the option. Like if you think this is going to resonate with you, it's not shoving it in your face saying, this is the time to rest. Don't you dare do anything that you enjoy. And you're like, I want to go on my run. It's like, then sure. But for others, so it's really just depends on the person and what feels right for them. But to know that it is an offering that they can tap into.
Nice. And so then this comes back to that whole be in touch with your body, be a bit more in tune, and realize that it's okay to actually take the time off, or to rest, recover, whatever it is. But also that it is also okay if you really feel like you can and go for it, then that's awesome.
Yeah. I do think there is probably, for myself, when it comes time for menstrual, I'll do something probably that I've already known or know that I can do well. So it's not straying as far, but I know that I can do it because it's like I do one of my go-tos, and I'm up for one of my go-tos instead of going to something like push, 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 and like really leveling up. It's like, no, I feel like doing something, but doing it in a way that's not overexerting to 1,000 degrees. But that's also just my approach. But ladies could do as they want, but knowing that they have the options. And then honestly, they could try it. They could try it and see how they feel. Then do that push, push, push. Go for it on that day, but then just observe how you felt afterwards and see if that vibed with you.
And so on that note, actually, slight tangent, but do you recommend like journaling, recording workouts, and seeing how you feel over the course of the month in your menstrual cycle?
Yeah. We actually have within Sync in all these journal prompts that match each of your phases to help you notice. There are so many different ways to connect with yourself. And so it's like, here are all the tools. Here are all the tools that you possibly could do that. And sometimes having that strong toolbox is great. And at first, you need to dig into that toolbox a little bit more and to use it more fully to really understand, especially if it's your first time. And so sometimes you really have to articulate it, because it's like, how was this? And it's like, I just felt like, saying that I always do. It's like, well, we're not going to quite learn too much from that answer. So how can we unpack it more? And you can unpack it by talking with someone and spelling it out. And then you obviously can unpack it by writing it out and observing it. So I'm a huge supporter of writing, but I also know everyone connects to some things in different ways. So knowing that they also have options for how to connect. And that's one great in the beginning.
Right.
And whenever, but to come back to.
And you mentioned that you adjust your eating habits based on different phases of your cycle. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes. So definitely in the beginning when I was connecting, I adjusted a lot more, I would probably say, to bring myself into balance. But that was definitely the getting those building blocks and those foundations in shape. And then adjusting, knowing like what I'm putting in my smoothies. I love my smoothies in the morning. And it's such a great way to just like make subtle shifts. And just, instead of when you start thinking every single meal, every single day is going to be different, and this whole approach, it gets really overwhelming. And it's like, no, it's really fine just to break it down and to start it with one thing.
Start with the little things.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that it also takes 3 months to even start to notice a shift in a woman's body from how she's eating and taking care of it to see a difference. So it really is starting with some small things that then can be sustainable. And then you can start to continue to build off it. And then once I, or she, but once I made some small shifts and then kept them up, then it's a lot easier to add on the next shift I intend to make and to keep it going and to let those habits continue to build on. So I felt like when I first had really learned the framework and wanted to know it. And I would pull up the list often when going to the grocery store. And then I found the recipes I liked. I kind of bucketed them in certain categories to be like, okay, great. This is a good one for here. I already like this food. Well, I'm not going to eat it every single day. Might as well have it for this week. So then I have just like a few rooted recipes for it.
So what sort of list is this? So I'm slightly ignorant in this area. And is there a specific kind of evidence-backed approach to this, or is this personal intuition and experience? Where does this fall in that?
This has come from Lisa Vitti, and are you familiar with her work in Flow Living?
No, I can't say I've heard her.
Okay. She's done a lot of work and frontier work for women's health and has dived into this topic a whole bunch to help women understand this initial framework. Okay. And I would probably argue to say she was a lot of ladies' first introduction to cycle syncing and to understanding it. And so she has a chart that she's created for nutrition guidelines of certain nuts to have at certain times, certain vegetables to have at certain times. And so able to take that and then balance out certain meals behind it. But now I don't look at that list as much. And I just kind of also already have that framework, and I have the flow, and I'm already pretty centered and balanced. So then I'll just kind of like do things as I choose, or maybe prepare things in the way that resonates with how I'm feeling at that time. So with the luteal phase in the fall, then I will like to roast some things or have some warm things. I even just had told my aunt the other week, and she's like, well, what do you want? I was like, something warm. I just need warm and comfort today. Just just warmth and comfort. So whatever we have for that, please. And so I'll even just make shifts of temperature of what I'm choosing to have.
Okay. What advice would you give to other women who are interested in adjusting their nutrition and their diets according to their cycle?
I would definitely say to thinking of those base hormones and knowing your blood sugar levels are staying consistent throughout the day and making sure you're eating consistently throughout the day, that those actually is the foundation of cycle syncing, and not to get too crazy right off the bat and to get too extreme, and that it honestly seems more mundane at first than what you want it to be. Kind of want it to be more extreme or more flashy. And it really is connecting with making sure that, and that's where each woman has a different need for herself. Someone's getting their hydrating in, but man, they really are slacking on their rest. So that's where we want to balance. But someone else needs that extra water and needs to make sure, or someone else is skipping their time window and always gets a headache at a certain time because they're not eating. So everyone has a different baseline health habit that maybe is slipping through the cracks. But if they can bring that up, that will improve their hormone health. And that is the first step for cycle syncing then.
It's funny because that's the sort of similar approach that I would take for most people with nutrition. And even if I'm working with elite athletes, they kind of want to know, like, what is that thing that's going to give them the extra edge, or could they take a supplement that's going to make them so much better or whatever. I'm like, well, actually, just do the basics, because you aren't even doing that right. Like, you want the icing on the cake and you're not, to use the metaphor, you haven't got the groundwork or whatever. And it's funny how much of a difference just doing those basics really makes, because actually they're the ones which add up over time hugely, and they're going to make the biggest difference. And it sounds like from what you're saying, that's a similar sort of approach you would take there. Like, yes, you might be able to get into the nitty gritties and change some things, but actually the biggest benefits you're going to get are listening to your body, maybe journaling if you want to do that, kind of getting in touch, understanding how you might feel with certain foods throughout the different time of the month, and then get the basics right, and then building from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yep. And how people I want the good stuff. I want the good stuff. It's like, this is the good stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry,
the best
cool.
things often aren't particularly sexy. They're quite boring. And it's kind of difficult because it means that the kind of the stuff that sounds a bit sexier and interesting generally is more enticing and sells better, which is a bit of a shame, especially when you think, well, so many women would be better off by just doing really simple things. But anyway, that's a side tangent. So if we were thinking about someone who was just approaching this for the first time in terms of exercise as well, can you give any top tips of where you would start? So someone who is kind of new getting into exercise, but also wants to be in touch with their menstrual cycle, what approach would you take with them?
As always, to listen to their body, and to know that someone else's body is different from yours. And also, there is no one way to work out. There are so many ways to move your body. And that I really see fitness as a type of wellness. It's as a type of expression, and to find enjoyment in it. So if someone's just starting out, go back to what you enjoy. How do you enjoy moving your body? Because really, what I want for everyone, and what I assume they want for themselves, is longevity, to get to do and show up for what they want to in their lives at the fullest capacity that they can, and with that physically as well. And so I want them to enjoy what they're doing and move and enjoy how they're doing it. So they can go back to how they like to move as a kid if they're confused and don't know what that is. But if they think they have to then do a certain workout to achieve a certain results, just start by rethinking that approach. And you really don't have to. There's so many ways to move. If you do not like reformer Pilates, do not go to that class. There's so many ways to achieve that. Do something you enjoy.
I love this because it's such an important thing. And you mentioned it, that it's about longevity. And I know so many people, females, but also males as well, who feel like they have to exercise a certain way. They have to run because everyone else does, or because their friend does, or they have to do a certain thing. And it's like, well, if you hate that, why? because you're not going to do it over time. Like, you might do it for a couple of weeks, you might even do it for a couple of months, but you're not going to do it forever. And if we're trying to get you to have good behaviors, to be healthy, and you do this over the long term, don't do something you don't enjoy. There is way more, like you said, way more to exercise and movement than doing something which you hate.
Yep, 100%.
And in terms of any misconceptions about female health and fitness, anything that you would like to dispel, or you see like a rumor or something permeating on the internet, you're like, that drives me crazy?
I feel like for women's health, unfortunately, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of things. But also what I think I'll address for this is a woman's body isn't supposed to be in pain. And we've normalized that there is pain associated with being a woman, physical pain of symptoms, and knowing that she is not designed to be in pain, and to pay attention to that and to keep asking questions about it within yourself. Keep getting curious to ask your healthcare providers as well, because I don't want you to be living in pain and thinking that that is okay or expected, because it's not. And that will then affect so much of how you show up to your fitness routines and to your life, because you'll be doing something that you enjoy and you're like, look at me go, I'm doing so good. And then you experience pain, and it happens every single time and every single month. And then you fall off, and then you feel like a failure because your friend isn't falling off. They're still doing it. And so you're seeing this judgment, and you're seeing that I'm supposed to be doing this 4 days a week at this intensity because I'm supposed to, yet they're in pain and then obviously need to care for themselves in that way. But that's where love ladies to know that pain, let's start understanding that and see what we can do to support you all throughout the month. So by the time you get there, it is less pain, or can minimize symptoms, and start by changing ththese habits to help you not experience that pain. So keep questioning it.
Awesome. I think that's a really nice place to just say, we'll wrap up here, because there's a heck of a lot of useful stuff for people there, and it's really nice to hear your passion for it as well. So where can people find out a bit more about you, about Sink In? Just tell us where they can find you and the stuff that you do.
Yes, of course. You can find all the updates that we have. We have a lot in the works. Clearly, you can tell I'm not short of ideas or passion for women's health. So there's a lot more to come from us. And so we're Sink In. It's 2 words, SYNC, second word in, and at sinkinapp.com for our newsletter, as well as the Sink In app that is available for iPhone and for Android, and that will host our community as well as all of our comprehensive fitness programs that help women feel empowered with their body.
Amazing. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening, just go to whatever platform, it will be there, and so you can go and find it all. So Lizzy, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you, James. This has been awesome.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks.